The 8-bit era, defined by the NES, the Master System, and the Game Boy, was a time of brutal restrictions. Artists were limited to a handful of colors, tiny sprite sizes, and memory constraints that would blow a Gen Z kid's mind. Yet, it was exactly these limitations that bred creativity and experimentation. These aren't just good for the time, these are games with visual identities so strong, so technically impressive, that they remain stunning pieces of visual art to this day. So, here are 15 gorgeous 8-bit games that are shockingly beautiful even now. Gimmick, 1992. Sunsoft is one of the wizards of the NES, making many incredible games, and Gimmick is considered one of their best. Released when the SNES was already out, this game looks like it belongs to the SNES and not the NES. It is widely considered one of the most technically advanced games made for the NES. The artists used incredibly complex shading and dithering techniques to give the objects and background incredible depth and shading. And with an artfully chosen color palette that eschews the standard primary colors for soft pastels and gradients, creating a storybook aesthetic that defies the system's limitations. There's also a complex physics system when your character slides down slopes and objects that bounce off walls with realistic trajectories, and the enemy's AI is robust for a platformer as they react, track you, and react with each other. This is the game that fully flexes what the NES is capable of. Crisis Force, 1991. Developed by Konami at the peak of their domination of the games market, this vertical shooter is a technical masterpiece. A vertical shoot-'em-up that looks like it should be running on a Genesis and not the NES. Konami utilized aggressive flickering and rapid tile swapping to create the illusion of multiple background layers, moving at different speeds, something the NES hardware technically cannot do. You fly through canyons that seem to have actual depth, over oceans with waves, and through clouds that scroll independently from the ground. It is the closest the system ever came to actual parallax scrolling. The bosses are multi-sprite enemies with moving parts, transforming limbs, and complex attack patterns. In most NES games, a boss this size would cause the game to lag and slow to a crawl, but here the frame rate stays steady even with 2-player co-op. Recca, Summer Carnival 1992. Most NES games struggle to have more than 6 moving objects on screen, but this game has so many enemies and projectiles on screen, it technically shouldn't be possible on this hardware. The NES has a hard limit on how many sprites can be on screen before they start to disappear. You can mitigate this with sprite flickering, but restoring to it is usually a sign of something going wrong. But Recca built the entire game around it. Projectiles here actually don't move, they flicker from one position to the next, and with their speeds, it looks like they're moving even though they're technically static. The result is a chaotic battle arena that's absolutely filled with projectiles, enemies, and moving hazards. They also utilize raster scroll effects to make the backgrounds ripple and warp, simulating high-speed dives and heat hazes that look like 16-bit processing. Little Samson, 1992. If Recca mastered chaos, then Little Samson mastered the storytelling on the NES. Developed by Takeru and published by Taito, this platformer stands as arguably the cleanest, most polished game on the NES. It looks and plays like a living storybook or even a Disney movie. The game features 4 playable characters, and the artists convey their weight and personality entirely through sprite work. You can tell what each character is about from their design and sprite work, from the heavy tank Gam the Rock Lord to KO the mouse who runs around frantically and hides. The backgrounds are also extremely detailed and varied, making me wonder how much of the graphics memory is dedicated purely for all these backgrounds, from ominous purple storm clouds, lush green jungles, and cold blue cavern walls. It's a very well-drawn and designed game that conveys everything through its visual storytelling. Metal Storm 1991. Irem was a developer famous for their detailed arcade games like R-Type, and with Metal Storm, they made an NES game that plays more like an arcade cabinet than a home console release. The sprites are dense and complex, somehow remaining crisp and clear when such things look incredibly muddy on an 8-bit system. The game's central mechanic is gravity switching. You can jump between the floor and ceiling instantly. Because of this, the levels have to be designed to be vertically symmetrical and coherent. Oh, and not to mention the complex parallax scrolling effects that should have been impossible on the NES, which can get dizzying at some points with multiple detailed backgrounds scrolling in different directions. The enemies and main character do still remain distinct and pop out from the background, despite the limited colors, making for a very fun run-and-gun NES title. Shatterhand, 1991. Natsume had a reputation for making games that felt heavy, and Shatterhand is one of the grittiest and heaviest games on the system. While most games go for bright, cartoony aesthetics due to the limitations of sprite readability and limited color, Shatterhand commits to that Blade Runner-esque industrial cyberpunk look, and they pull it off wonderfully, feeling cinematic at points. And you guys all know that cinematic and NES don't belong in the same sentence. The character animations are equally detailed, the protagonist's jacket looking like it flaps in the breeze, and everyone has smooth, detailed walk cycles. The punches have excellent feedback with sparks flying when your cybernetic fist meets the armor of enemies. The backgrounds are cinematic as well. The game uses a dark, muted color palette with deep navies, rust browns, and steel grays, dotted by bright factory lights and burning fires. This high-contrast sprite work even makes the metal surfaces shimmer in the fox light. Journey to Silius, 1990. You'll see Sunsoft a lot on this list, and Journey to Silius is considered one of the best games ever made, period. I've already talked about how this game started as a Terminator game before the license fell through, and they retooled it into their own IP. The artists were then free to create their own apocalyptic future that feels more cohesive than the source material. The backgrounds tell the story of this ruined, desolate world in detail that goes beyond 8-bit. You adventure through felled skyscraper cities, underground bases filled with open, sparking circuitry, and sprawling factories that stretch endlessly into the horizon. The gameplay is equally weighty as your character Jay McCrae walks with slow determination and has to conserve ammo, adding survival elements. You need to use cover, dodge, and shoot tactically if you want to get through the game. Felix the Cat, 1992. Throughout the NES's life cycle, there have been many attempts to make a playable cartoon game because such things would basically be an instant hit with the kids, a real moneymaker. Hudson Soft came the closest with their license of the popular Felix the Cat franchise, creating a wonderful Mario clone. The sprites are big, bold, bright, and cel-shaded, matching the visuals of the cartoon. I mean, this game can be compared to Super Mario Bros. 3 and can sometimes surpass it when it comes to some parts, such as the upgrades and vehicles, as Felix can transform into a singer, then into a car and a tank when he gets upgrades. There are also other vehicles such as a submarine and even a rideable dolphin. The environments and ground tiles are surprisingly detailed for a platformer like this, surpassing the flat blocks of Mario Bros. 3. Gargoyle's Quest 2: The Demon Darkness, 1992. As I've said before, most NES games go for vibrant and cartoony due to the limited colors, but Capcom somehow made a dark gothic masterpiece with expert shading and rendering on the NES. There's heavy use of shading, dithering, artistic rendering, and pseudo 3D effects make this world come to life and look massive. The worlds and characters are creatively designed with tons of gothic horror, Halloween, and unique monster designs that I absolutely love. The protagonist, Firebrand, has lots of animations, states, and abilities including fire breath, the ability to climb vertical surfaces, and a hover flight, whose duration you can extend through upgrades. Uniquely, the game splits its visuals between a top-down RPG overworld and side-scrolling action stages. The storytelling is amazing for the NES with cutscenes, NPCs you can talk to, and a robust gothic story. I gotta say, this is one of the most mechanically robust games on this console. Bucky O'Hare, 1992. If I had a nickel for every game in the 90s that starred a neon green rabbit mascot that used a blaster, well, I had 2 nickels. Not saying Jazz Jack Rabbit ripped off Bucky, but it's a mighty coincidence. Konami pulled out all the stops for this one, and the result is one of the best scrolling shooters on the console. First thing you'll notice is the bright saturated colors mimicking the color and design choice of the cartoons. The second thing you'll notice is just how fast the game does. Despite it moving faster than even Mega Man, the game maintains a steady FPS and its backgrounds at such high speeds can cause dizziness. You can also play as 5 different characters and each plays wildly differently, from scatter shots to wall-penetrating lasers to bombs that can destroy obstacles. Between the gameplay, level design, and visuals, this game has so much going for it. Batman: Return of the Joker, 1991. No, you're not seeing this wrong, and this isn't a 16-bit game that accidentally snuck onto this list. This is an honest-to-God NES game that has visuals that outdo most 16-bit titles. Sunsoft returns here with an absolute graphics breaker. Return of the Joker is widely cited as having the largest, most detailed character sprites ever rendered on the console. I mean, what can I say? In most NES platformers, the character is a small square block. Here, Batman is a tall, realistically proportioned figure, but the artists used a technique that combined multiple sprites to create a single character, allowing for large humanoid figures. Batman's cape flutters so realistically and his arms and legs move independently of each other, something you don't see in many games. With a parallax scrolling clouds above, the sprites that artfully use dithered black to create detailed shadows and 3D effects, this game is a masterwork on the NES. Over Horizon, 1991. While other shoot-'em-ups were trying to compete with each other by filling the screen with as many objects as possible, the developers Hot B took a completely different approach: environments. Most other games have generic stars and asteroids and industrial areas. The backgrounds are just wallpapers for the actual action. In Over Horizon, the environment is alive. You fly through stages where massive mechanical pistons pump rhythmically, blocking your path, and organic covered caves that seem to breathe. The water stage is particularly impressive, using rapid palette cycling to create a shimmering, flowing liquid effects. The enemies and bosses are techno-organic monstrosities that have unique gameplay mechanics compared to other shoot-'em-ups, and they utilize the environment as well. Over Horizon is one of the best shoot-'em-ups on this console because it decided to forge its own path instead of following the competition. Power Strike 2, 1993. We've talked a lot about the NES, but the Sega Master System was an 8-bit machine that could face up against the NES, and Power Strike 2 was proof of that. Developed by Compile, masters of the shoot-'em-up genre, Power Strike 2 is one of the most impressive shooters of the 8-bit era. The biggest downside marker of the 8-bit is the flicker and slowdown when too many processes were happening at once. Power Strike 2 somehow completely sidesteps this, as the screen can be completely filled with sprites, enemies, and projectiles, and there's no flickering or slowdown I could see. It honestly feels faster and smoother than many 16-bit titles. You're piloting a biplane over 1930s-style industrial landscapes, fighting massive airships and tanks rendered in the ever-beloved steampunk aesthetic, with detailed pipes, vents, and steam. The screen is filled with sprite work from ground tiles to ships to projectiles, painting a full picture. Master of Darkness, 1992. For years, Sega has envied Nintendo's Castlevania games. I believe Master of Darkness is their best interpretation of the gothic monster hunting genre. Because the Master System hardware allowed for a larger color palette than the NES, this game is able to be softer, deeper, and richer than the high-contrast look of the NES. The game is set in a haunted version of Victorian London, and the art direction leans heavily into this unique setting. The foggy banks of the Thames, gaslit cobblestone streets, and rich wood hallways, the environment design is absolutely spectacular, perfectly capturing the creepy London nights. The monster designs are actually creepy as well, the way they move and attack especially. I can easily see a kid getting nightmares after playing this. Horror isn't something that an 8-bit system can pull off, and yet Master of Darkness does it so well. The Lucky Dime Caper starring Donald Duck, 1991. In the early 90s, Sega and Disney had a partnership that produced some of the best-looking games of the generation, and the Lucky Dime Caper of the Master System is one of them. With the aid of Disney, Sega was able to make a game that adheres to the squash and stretch cartoon design. The star of this game is, of course, Donald Duck, and the animators didn't just capture his look, but also his attitude in every animation. His face is large, and he displays unique facial animations, such as wonder when he's swinging from a vine or anger when he gets hit. If you wait too long, he taps his foot impatiently, which reminds me of an expressive blue hedgehog. The animations for swinging, his hammer, or sliding have a momentum that feels hand-drawn rather than programmed. Combined with the large color palette and globe-trotting environments, it creates a real Disney come-to-life game. From the cinematic industrial weight of Shatterhand to the chaos of Recca, to the gothic master artwork of Gargoyle's Quest 2, Batman, and Master of Darkness. These games show that the 8-bit wasn't just a stepping stone, that real art can be bred from it. And those folks are the 12 gorgeous 8-bit games that are shockingly beautiful even now. What do you guys think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's start a conversation. And as always, the best way to keep updated with all our new content is through a subscription. Hit that like, subscribe, and follow us for more content. This is John of Marvelous Gamers. We'll see you on our next video.